Okay, so let me give you a brief review what we've done so far. Okay, so economics is the science that explores, that investigates human action. Economics is the science of human struggle for survival. Okay, survival is innate, is intrinsic to human beings, and it is a struggle because of the scarcities. Scarcities are external and internal to the individual. External scarcities include shortage of food, water, right? Human beings require heat, we need housing, transportation, security, right? So these are scarcities. There are also internal scarcities to the human being, and the most fundamental scarcity is time. Okay, human beings are mortal. Time is the most fundamental scarcity, internal, intrinsic to human beings. If I'm picking apples, I can't be picking oranges. I can't be at two places at the same time, right? So time and space are the fundamental, intrinsic human scarcities. So the science of economics is the study of scarcities, is the study of how human beings, right, struggle to survive in this world of scarcities. Our goals, our preferences, the first one, as I mentioned, is survival, okay? And then leisure time, right? Transportation, food, housing, education, etc. Human action is guided by our human nature, okay? By our human nature, and human action takes place in the state of nature. Hobbes describes the state of nature, an environment where there are no rules, there is no order, neither an anarchic order, right, a market order, nor a political order, right? So we're going to start, we're going to investigate, this course investigates human struggle, starting from the foundations, where human beings, right, in order to attain their goals, their desires, their preferences, realize that the most efficient, the most effective way to attain these desires is to do what? Enter the marketplace, enter society, motivated by their own self-interest, and do what? Specialize and trade. Because specialization mitigates the risks of uncertainty that exists in the state of nature. Specialization is a shortcut to your attainment of your goals and desires. And we also studied that specialization, foundational to specialization, is the concept of opportunity cost. Human beings specialize in goods and services in which they have a comparative advantage, or they specialize in goods and services in which they have a lower opportunity cost vis-a-vis the production of other goods and services. Okay? Trade is not based on differences in productivity. That's absolute advantage. We studied that trade is based on differences in opportunity cost, which is the comparative advantage. These ideas of specialization based on differences of opportunity costs were expounded during the classical school of economic thought, which is the first modern school of economic thought, in the 18th century by Adam Smith and David Ricardo. Okay, so human beings enter the marketplace realizing in isolation, in autarky, it is too difficult for them to survive, to attain their goals, their preferences. So they choose a shortcut, right? Human beings are volitional. Human action is purposeful. It's not random. So human beings, a purposeful human action leads our struggle into the marketplace, leads us to specialize and trade. Okay. Now, in the market where exchange is taking place, fairly quickly human beings realized that a direct barter, an exchange of an apple for an orange, is inefficient. Why is it inefficient? Because in a direct barter system, there is the problem of what we call double coincidence of wants. So if I have apples and I want bananas, I have to come knock on your door. I say, hey, Brandon, I have apples. Do you have bananas? You say, oh, I want apples, but sorry, I don't have bananas. So trade does not take place. So I have to go to another person in the village to say, hey, Ethan, right? I have apples. Do you have bananas? And he says, yeah, I have bananas, but I don't want your apples, right? So there is no match. We call this the double coincidence of one. So you must find someone in the marketplace who has what you have, who desires what you're selling, and you desire what that person has, right? So because to mitigate, to make this exchange more efficient, more effective, human beings discovered a medium of exchange. What is medium of exchange? It's money, okay? Money emerged in the marketplace like languages. It didn't emerge via a centralized authority, via engineering. There wasn't a king, right? Or a bureaucrat said, oh, let there be money because this is more efficient. Money arose in the marketplace. And the reason we know that money could only emerge via human action is because the most marketable commodity emerges as a medium of exchange. For example, I knock on your door, I said, I have apples, do you have bananas? And you say, you know what, I don't have bananas, I want your apples, but I'll give you dates. If you take my dates, I'm sure you can go to the next villager who has bananas, give him the dates, and then he'll give you the banana. If I'm convinced, and I'm able to convince my trading partner that he can take the dates and buy the watermelon with it, and then so on and so forth, there emerges in the marketplace a medium of exchange in the form of dates, okay? Historically, in recorded history, in Mesopotamia, which is currently Iraq, the country between the Euphrates and the Tigris river systems, there emerged barley as a medium of exchange. Okay, so the reason I said this medium of exchange could only emerge in the marketplace because only the marketplace, via human action, there will be discovered the most marketable commodity, right? The medium of exchange must have desired characteristics. It must be divisible for smaller exchanges. It must be transportable, and it has to be durable. Tomatoes did not emerge as a medium of exchange, right? Apples did not, but barley did because of longevity. But historically, over time, over thousands of years, human beings discovered an alternative, a better, more effective, more efficient medium of exchange in the form of gold and silver. In between, we went from barley to tea leaves to coffee, sugar. In prisoners would exchange cigarettes as a medium of exchange, right? So historically, we went towards metal money, alloy, gold and silver. Why? Because it's the most desirable market commodity that plays the best role. It has the characteristics that we desire in a medium of exchange. It's transportable. It's divisible. It's durable. Gold is durable. Thousands of years you could have your gold, right? So it's recognizable, it's resistant to counterfeiting. So it has all the desired characteristics that we desire in our medium of exchange. Okay? So the science of economics is the science of exchange, is the science where human beings enter the marketplace motivated by their self-interest, which is our human nature. We traced it all the way down to our genetic makeup, the selfish genes, right? Gives rise to selfish behavior, selfish action, because of the scarcities in the world. So from these scarcities, human beings enter the marketplace. Once you enter the marketplace for efficiency and efficacy, human beings discovered a medium of exchange. Once we have a medium of exchange, then directly there emerges prices. What is a price? Price is relative valuation, relative exchange ratios, right? In a barter system, an apple would be exchanged for 2 bananas. An apple would be exchanged for 3 watermelons. An apple. So the apple would have relative exchange ratio vis-a-vis millions of goods and services. Imagine how complicated life would be when you want to sell your apple, then somebody is going to offer you 3 bananas, another person 2 tomatoes, another person half a watermelon, right? So a banana or an apple would have millions of exchange ratio vis-a-vis all the other goods and services. Life would be difficult, nearly impossible. Society would be primitive, right? But with the medium of exchange, now everything has an exchange value relative to the numeraire good, which is the medium of exchange. So an apple would be worth 1 ounce of a gold. A banana would be worth 2 ounces of a gold. A car would be worth 1,000 ounces of a gold. A house would be worth 1,000,000 ounces of a gold, right? So everything now is tied to the numeraire good, which is gold, which is a good, right? So, but that particular good is the good that ties all the prices, you know, in a way that is more efficient for us to exchange. Now, once we have prices of goods and services, there also emerges in the marketplace, economic calculations are possible. With prices, we can have economic calculations. That means we can calculate costs and benefits, right? If wages are prices of labor, right? If I'm getting raw material, I'm hiring wages, I'm producing apples, and I'm selling it in the marketplace for the prices. Now the prices are comparable because it's gold, right? So therefore, I'm able to calculate costs and profits. If I spend more money producing the good that I'm receiving for it, that means I'm making losses. That means I should stop production. I'm wasting society's scarce resources, right? So with the help of money, I'm also able to calculate profits. If the cost of production is less than the value I get for the final goods and services that I'm producing, then I'm making profits. So continue production. You're taking resources of a lesser value, you're mixing your ingenuity, your creativity, you're mixing technology, your know-how, your entrepreneurship, and you're producing a good of a higher value, right? So all of these economic calculations that brings about prosperity in the marketplace were all fundamentally driven by the medium of exchange, the discovery of the medium of exchange. I think it's the most genius discovery in humanity. More important discovery than any other technological discovery. I mean, imagine without a medium of exchange, we'll be in a primitive world, right? The ingenuity, the creativity, the prosperity that we get from the medium of exchange is parallel to none, right? It's more important than languages, right? Means of communication. We can communicate verbally, we can communicate using signs. Some people say mathematics is a universal language. But I think in the social sciences, within the human race, the most important means of communication is prices, money prices, right? So how do you communicate with an individual that you like, with a farmer, a producer of apples somewhere else in the world, right? How do you tell them you like more green apples versus red apples? All you have to do is go to the marketplace and buy more green apples. When prices of green apples go up because the demand is going up, it sends a signal to producers, switch your production from red apples to green apples. So that way you are communicating with people that you don't know where they are, where they exist. You don't speak their languages. You might like them, you might dislike them. So the prices, the emergence of a medium of exchange with which we are able to generate prices plays a communicative role. As an economist, I don't look at prices as an accounting measure. When the price goes up, I don't say, oh, like it went up from $2 to $3. It's not an accounting calculation. As an economist, embedded in the price, there is knowledge, right? If price of coffee beans is going up, maybe there is a drought in Brazil, right? If the price of coffee is going up, maybe the demand for coffee is going down. People are switching to tea, to matcha, to etc., right? So prices play a communicative role. They create interconnectedness, interdependence in the marketplace, right? So now from this medium of exchange, we have prices. From prices, we have profit and loss calculations, economic calculations. Also with the emergence of a medium of exchange, for the first time in history, there is what we call savings. In a barter system, I give you the apples, I get the orange, and then we're done. I consume the apple, you consume the orange. Next week, this same time, we exchange apples and oranges, bananas and watermelons. But with a medium of exchange, for the first time, you can do what? You can safely and securely do what? Set it aside. So because barley is durable, in particular gold and silver. So maybe you sell your apples and your oranges and you have certain amount of gold, you use parts of it and the other part you put it in a savings account, in a money warehouse or what we call a bank nowadays. In a barter system, this was not possible. But with the discovery of a medium of exchange, now there arises the concept of savings. Savings are fundamental. If you take any economic development course or studies or you read books, you realize that the most fundamental, even as fundamental, if not more, than technology. Because without savings, what is technology? Technology is physical capital, capital goods. We call them machinery. But how does technology arises? Well, it requires savings. Without savings, we cannot produce capital goods. We cannot produce machinery. We cannot produce computers, right? So savings is fundamental. With savings, we're able to build bridges. And the workers are getting paid during the time when these bridges are being produced, right? So we need money from the start of the production of machinery, early stages of production, all the way to last stage of production, right? To produce a computer requires time. It requires money. This time frame, right, must be compensated by somebody's savings. And with the medium of exchange, there arises the concept of savings for the first time. So savings via investment turn into capital goods, machinery, and with capital goods, we're able to be more productive, okay? Prosperity arises. So if you see, all of this started with human action, struggling for survive. They enter the marketplace. They discover a medium of exchange. From the discovery of the medium of exchange, right, more exchange, more specialization is taking place. By the way, from the specialization of exchange, from the discovery of the medium of exchange, when the specialization is taking place, well, the division of labor is getting deeper and deeper. What is the division of labor? The division of labor is that more and more subdivisions within the same industry, right, is being created. And the more the division of labor, the deeper the division of labor, the more interconnected we become, the more harmony. So every single individual on planet Earth, right, becomes a unique individual, a unique piece of a puzzle. There are no people alike, because the division of labor can get infinitely deeper and deeper, okay? And we have mechanisms of calculating. 100 years ago, there was just a doctor. A doctor is a doctor. Now we have ophthalmologists, you have, gynecologists, you have all these like varieties. So title of jobs are increasing. Every 27 years, I'm going to show you a diagram, it doubles, okay? So imagine how deeper and deeper, especially the division of labor is getting. And the deeper it gets, the more interconnected your well-being is within my self-interested optimization. I want you to be well. You're my dentist. I want you to be well. You're my accountant. I want him to be well. He's the person who's playing music for him, right? So the division of labor is fundamental for creating harmonious social order. From this, the division of labor, the discovery of the medium of exchange, cost-benefit calculations, economic calculations, from savings, there also arises a new category of market participants. It's not like the workers and, now we have something called an entrepreneurship, right? In a barter system was limited, but now in entrepreneurship, the concept of entrepreneurship is very important. The entrepreneur is alert to new market conditions. He's the person that brings about a balance between the supply and the demand side of the marketplace. He anticipates future demands. Right? He anticipates goods and services that people would value in a world of uncertainty, and they get compensated. They are the people, it's like the orchestra conductor, puts everything together, right? Brings the capital from capital owners, brings the workers, brings in the technology, puts everything together and creates a business that serves society. In a market economy, the only way to wealth is by producing more effectively, more efficiently, and the goods and the services that consumers desire. That's the only way to prosperity. Now, we call this order market specialization, trade, medium of exchange, money, economic calculations, prices, profits, costs, entrepreneurship. There arises an order, an economic order, and we call that order the catalectic order. So the catalectic order is an order that emerges in the marketplace via human action, and the derivatives of human action, such as the discovery of medium of exchange, price, economic calculations, savings, and entrepreneurship. Now, from this catalactic order, from within this catalactic order, there also emerges market institutions. What are market institutions? Well, they're institutions that provide stability in our exchange, that provide safety in our exchange, that provide efficiency in our exchange, right? And these market institutions are emergent within, right? They're within the catalactic order. Examples of these market institutions: banking institutions, financial institutions that do what? Facilitate exchange between debtors and creditors, right? So it's creating a relationship among market participants, debtors and creditors. It will bring prosperity to all of us. There emerges in the marketplace another market institutions, such as assurance agencies. What do assurance companies do? Well, they validate the safety of a drug, for example, the efficacy of a drug, right? So they're assuring to you the safety and efficacy of a drug. Well, we need those institutions, right, in exchange. There also emerges in the marketplace insurance agencies. What do insurance agencies do? They mitigate risk. When you're exchanging, there are risks associated, right? When you send out your ships all the way to India and Indonesia to bring spices, right, to Europe, you want to insure. Maritime insurance is the first concept of insurance that arose in when? Or arose in England, right? The Lloyds of London, I think 18th century, 17th century, I think 1637, if I'm not mistaken, right? So there arises this maritime insurance. Well, the objective is to do what? Cut down on the risk, mitigate risks in case your ship sinks or the pirates take over. There also emerges in the marketplace arbitration and mediation agencies. What is the concept? What is the objective? Right? In trade, in exchange, in the marketplace, there arises disputes. So to adjudicate disputes, there arises arbitration and mediation services, jurisprudence. There also emerged in the marketplace, in this catalactic order, within this catalactic order, there also emerged safety and security agencies, companies, right? To protect what? Your property and your personhood. Because in exchange, there might be, right, disputes. Disputes might lead to aggression. So to protect yourself from harm, to protect your property from harm, there also emerged security agencies. All these institutions, whether it's security, whether it's insurance, whether it's assurance, whether it's banking institutions, whether it's jurisprudence, whether it's property registry systems that arise in the marketplace, all of this happened organically, right, via human action. It wasn't by design, it was out of necessity. It was out of necessity. Out of necessity, human beings created all these institutions. And again, fundamentally, what was the goal? The goal was to attain your goals, okay? You're a human being and you want to attain some goals. Primary goal is survival. You know, other preferences you have is housing, education, etc. So you find a shortcut, you enter the marketplace, you specialize, you trade, you discover a medium of exchange, right? You discover all these institutions, and all of it is to attain your goals in the most efficient and successful way. Now, also from this catalactic order, there also emerged what we call governance. The order of governance. We all desire order. Order is a positive good. We all like it. We want order to attain our goals, right? So what is governance? Historically, there are many forms of governance. The two dominant ones would be monarchies, right, / dictatorship, you know, centralized authority, and also something called democracy, which is governance by the majority rule. That's what democracy is by definition, right? So there emerged two dominant forms of governance in the marketplace. Let's talk about monarchy, right? Centralized authority. Most of the land is by conquest, right? You have one entity. Most of the people, for example, under mercantilism and feudalism were serfs. They couldn't own the land, right? Land ownership was restricted to the nobility. The serfs would work the land and they get a fraction of the output. So it's a very hierarchical political system, okay? That's what monarchies are. There also emerged over time an alternative, which is called democracy. For many people, democracy was considered an advance, a better alternative to monarchies. As we discussed in our previous lecture, that wasn't the case. Monarchy, or excuse me, democracy is as evil, actually is even less efficient, as evil, as interventionist, as violating of our human nature, right, than as dictatorship or monarchy, okay? With respect to efficiency, we discussed that monarchies could be more efficient because they cut down on the bureaucratic inefficiencies. Monarchies could have a long horizon, right? Hans Hermann Hoppe has a book called Democracy, the God That Failed. He talks about the time preference of monarchs. When you're a monarch, you own the land, that's yours, right? I mean, you don't want to lose the land because you have ownership of the land, right? So wars were restricted. In case you lose the war, then quickly agreements were made and you get beheaded. Kings, right? People who waged wars, they got beheaded, they got killed because you lost the war. In democracies, right, the costs of entering into a war are dispersed. We pay for it, the soldiers pay for it. There is no ownership of a land because you don't own the land in a democracy, right? So you can wage wars and then you can retire after 4 or 8 years and become a painter, like one of our presidents did. He's an artist now after waging wars all around the world. Also, we'll talk about, money, the discovery of money, fiat money that leads to more wars. Wars are getting longer and longer. At the end, nobody wins, but society loses. Both countries, inhabitants, citizens of both nations are impoverished because of inflationary war machines that we have nowadays. So we talk about democracy is not necessarily an improvement. Democracy is a majority rule. 51% could impose their preferences on the 49%, and next week 2-3 people join the other 49%. Now they have majority. They violate another preferences that you have. It's like a gang, right? One day you're in the majority, the next day you're in the minority. Back and forth, more and more violations. Okay, I'd rather have one person's hand in my pocket than I have hundreds of hands in my pocket trying to get my value out of my labor. And there's so many shortcomings of democracy, but nevertheless, I'm not emphasizing the fact that monarchy is better, dictatorship. I'm saying they're equally evil, and I don't think democracy was an improvement, okay? At least psychologically, if I don't like certain aspects of my life, I can point my finger, I can say, that's the dictator, that's the monarch. He took a policy, a rule, and I don't like him. At least I know who my enemy is. I don't like this monarch. I'm hoping for the next monarch who would be better. But in a democracy, imagine someone takes my rights away, like the right for me to smoke a cigar and sip on a whiskey in the same location. It's banned in California. You cannot have a cigar and alcohol in the same location unless you're grandfathered, right? So therefore, every Saturday I go to the cigar lounge. And next to it there is a bar. I go take few puffs and then have to get out and go to the next door and took few sips of my whiskey and then back and forth. I mean, who came up with the idea, right, that you can have them side by side, but you can't have them in the same property, right? So this is just an example for illustrative purposes. I can name thousands of violations. You are immune to it. You're born in it. You think that's the way it is. You think you're free, Brandon, but you're not. It's an illusion. You're delusional if you're thinking you have freedom. You don't own your personhood. You don't own your body. You can't sell your kidney. You can't prostitute your body. You can't sell your labor for the price that you desire. Can you sell me your labor for $15, $20? No, you can't, because there are minimum wages. Can you sell your kidney? No. Can you rent out your house? No, there is rent control. And then it's violations, but you're delusional. You're under the illusion that you have freedom, okay? And you compare yourself to other countries, other entities. You should be comparing yourself within, forget there is no freedom elsewhere too, right? Maybe we're freer than other places, but it's irrelevant to me what's happening elsewhere. So democracy, the problem with democracy, the psychological problem is you don't know who your enemy is, right? So a monarch, I know I don't like him. Maybe his son would be a benevolent monarch. That would be fantastic if you have a benevolent, rational monarch, right? But with democracy, I don't know who the enemy is. So I'm walking down the streets, I'm looking, is he my enemy? Is he the one who signed up behind a closed curtain, committed a crime, banning me to have a cigar and a whiskey in the same property? Who is my enemy? It's like I'm lost. I don't know. I have anxiety. I have nervousness. My enemies are around me, but at the same time, I don't know. You know why? Because you took my freedom away behind a closed curtain. In hiding, you committed a crime. Okay? So I can go on with, democracy, just to show you that democracy does not align with human nature. Well, we don't only criticize monarchy and democracy. We provided in our previous lecture a new system of governance. That system of governance is called polycentric contractual society or proprietary contractual society. What does it mean? It's a society, its rules are set by the proprietor. And you, knowing the proprietor's rules and norms and customs, right? Contractually, you can enter that society, or you can refrain from entering that society. You can go to another society, okay? So we have today, how many countries do we have in the world today? 193. If you add Vatican and Gaza Strip, right, as countries, then it would be 195, right? Let's say 195 countries. We have 195 countries. How many people do we have on planet Earth? About 8.5 billion people. You want to fit in 8.5 billion preferences. Each individual has a unique preference. Our fingerprints, our pupils are different, let alone our preferences. You have 8.5 unique individuals, and you want to squeeze them into 195 jurisdictions, countries. How many items are on the menu when you go to Cheesecake Factory?
A lot.
You know Cheesecake Factory?
200?
It's seasonal. It can go all the way up to 280. It's 200 to 240. Sometimes it can hit 280. A simple lunch you want to have, one individual, Cheesecake Factory is giving you 250, 280 choices. But yet as a whole, with all your preferences that you have to be squeezed into only 195 countries. Theoretically, we should have 8.5 billion jurisdictions. But because human beings are motivated by their struggle for survival, right? They give up some of their freedoms, right? Some of their preferences to enter society. And the more you give up, the deeper and deeper and deeper you're entering society. How much deep you want to go into where the concentration, where the division of labor is the deepest, is subjective to the individual. If you want to go very deep, you might end up giving up more and more liberties. But you're always free. And there is millions of choices out there. At least, I would say we should start, instead of, 8.5 billion people, we should at least have 8.5 million jurisdictions to fit in 8.5 billion human beings on planet Earth. More and more jurisdictions. And the only freedom that you have is you can pick which jurisdiction you want to walk in. Once you get into that jurisdiction, you have to abide by the rules and the regulations of the proprietor. The proprietor could be one individual, or it could be like a management company owned via stocks. You could be a stock owner. But at no point And I repeat, no point in time you as an inhabitant of that piece of land should have the right to vote on any of your preferences. The problem is majority rule. Majority disorder is created from majority rule, because that's tyranny of the majority. So the freedom that you have is picking what you want to get in. But when you get in, when I go to a shopping center, I know the rules. I don't want the people who are shopping or the tenants to keep changing the rules, because every day there's going to be new rules. I can't keep up with it, and my rights could be violated in the process. But ahead of time, if it's a proprietary contractual society, I like the rules, I walk in. I don't have voting rights. You just live there based on the rules. You don't like it, there's 8.5 other jurisdictions. And if your management company doesn't do a good job, all you have to do is what? Move. They go bankrupt. They're under the threat of bankruptcy. A country with political borders is not under the threat of bankruptcy. Where do I go? 195 countries in the world. If I have 8.5 million countries in the world, right? Then the bureaucrats, in that case, then it would be management company. So managing a country should be as in a profit optimizing, is an optimization management. It shouldn't be managed based on bureaucracy. Bureaucrats don't have a skin in the game. They can never go bankrupt. But if the land is managed as a business with its inhabitants, then they are under the threat of bankruptcy. Then there is competition by the 8.5 million proprietors competing for what? Customers. So you can go inhabit that piece of property. Now within that proprietary contractual society, the provision of security, the provision of jurisprudence, the medium of exchange, all of that should be competitive. We have multiple exchange currencies circulating side by side. We have multiple assurance companies, not one. We don't have monopolies. Today we have one assurance company that does what? Validates the safety and the efficacy, and that's the FDA, for example, Food and Drug Administration. When there are monopolies, there arises what? Corruption. Corruption is a feature, is a characteristic of monopolization. It is inimical, it is inconsistent with free market economics for there to be monopolies, because these monopolies are short-lived and they are contestable. And given our financial institutions that we have today, anyone, if we don't like the way that Google search engine is behaving, right away, any one of you has access to millions and billions of dollars. You can go seek that money and produce a new search engine. If we don't like certain, so the market, in a market economy, there is no such thing as monopoly. Okay, they are called natural monopolies. They're short-lived. I gave you the data earlier, right? And they are contestable. What's a long-lasting monopoly that is characterized by corruption because of its centralization is all government services that they provide and all government mandated monopolies. When the government gives you a license, you're the only one who could practice certain service or produce certain goods and services. Okay, so corruption arises in this environment, whereas in a bureaucracy, also the bureaucrats don't have a skin in the game. It's called moral hazard. You might take more risks or less risks because of what? You don't, it doesn't fall on you, the cost of your decisions, okay? Costs are distributed and benefits are centralized. If the president, if the mafia in Washington, D.C., they wage a war, they succeed, they get all the money, they get all the applause, they get re-elected, more jobs, etc. We get nothing. Whether we win or lose a war, right? The average individual living inhabitant doesn't gain anything. If we lose, we pay for it in the form of higher prices, etc., right? In form of death, we die, right? The mafia is not dying. So bureaucratic management versus for-profit management, right? That's fundamental to our guiding us towards the having a preference for a proprietary, contractual, polycentric society. So it's proprietary society. And within that proprietary, we want the provision of goods and services to be competitive, okay? Competitive provision of arbitration and mediation. That's what that's where we are. I think I gave you a review, right? I mean, we can spend, obviously, it's been 4 months now. We can go deeper and deeper into every topic, every word that I mentioned. We could spend hours on it. But today is our last pillar. Super excited. And today we're going to talk about the market for morality. Okay. Before I do that, I just want to mention one thing. So in the first pillar, we said economics is the science that explores, that investigates human action, right? Human beings act, and that the action is the struggle. It's an action of struggle, right? Action is struggling. You're sweating, right? You're using your brain, so you're losing calories in that struggle. So it's a struggle. So economics is the science that investigates, that studies human struggle. But how do we study struggle? What is the mechanism with which we can explore and study human action? There in the world exist today two dominant forms of what? Epistemology. What is epistemology? Is the methodology, is the study of methodologies with which we can observe and understand and deduce, right, human action. So, in the social sciences, the proper methodology in the social sciences, the proper method with which we should investigate human action in its struggle for survival is called the deductive methodology. The deductive methodology is more scientific than the scientific method, because the alternative methodology is called the scientific methodology, which is what? Aggregation, data analysis, observation, collection of data, running regressional statistical correlation analysis with the help of data, and arriving at some statements, okay, which you can never say I accept. You can say I reject, right, the hypothesis that this is false or this is so. So that's the dominant methodology now in the social sciences. And as a free market economics, we studied that that is not the proper methodology. Economics is not an inductive, positivist, empiricist science. Economics is a deductive science. Deduction means you use your logic, right? You start from an axiom that is true. For example, we start with human action. So that is a truthful principle. You know it not by observation. You don't need to observe that people are moving and thinking to say, oh, people are acting. You know it by introspects, by looking inward. So it's not outward looking. It's a priori to your observation and your senses. Okay, so the science of economics is a priori deductive science. A priori, that means prior to your observations, to your hearing, to all your senses. A priori, that means by introspection, by looking inward, right? You know that you are an acting human being. Okay, now if this principle is true, it's axiomatic, then using valid arguments, we can arrive at other truthful principles, right? So if human beings are acting, and we know by introspection that our actions are what? They're not random, they are purposeful. When you wake up in the morning, you just don't like go and running in direction, right? You drove here, you didn't just drive around LA, right? You had a goal in mind, you had a purpose. So human action is purposeful. Well, when human action is purposeful, and when you have, and the state of nature, there are scarcities, to survive, which is intrinsic to you, survival is intrinsic to the individual, therefore every action must be what? Gainful to you. You have your goals. The science of economics doesn't tell you what your goals should be. Any goals that you have, right? You want to attain them. It could be climbing Mount Everest. It could be self-flagellation, self-immolation. It could be producing apples. You decide what your goals are. Okay, those are your preferences. But you're trying to attain those goals. Okay, so your actions are purposeful. So your actions, therefore, must be gainful. So you see, I'm excited. So it must be gainful. Before picking a goal, you have to rank them. So human beings therefore rank between alternatives. You could have come to class today, you could have went to the beach, you could have went to work, but you ranked, you have preferences. Ranking is ordinal, okay? Once you have your preferences ranked, then human action leads to you to do what? To move in that direction, where there are many ways. I can reach from A to point B, I can fly, I can take the subway, but because of your mortal internal scarcities, you want to find the most efficient way to get to your goal, right? Which is like which is exchanging in the marketplace, right? Based on differences in comparative advantage and attaining the funds so you can get to your goal in the most efficient way. You want to fly there. You can walk, it will take a lifetime, but in order to fly, you don't have an airplane. But you want to buy a ticket, so you enter the marketplace to get the ticket to get to your goal, right? So from the axiom of action, therefore, we already have what? That human beings are, action is purposeful, that there are goals, that there is ranking of the goals. That means also we realize that because of scarcities, use the most efficient way. Every action must be gainful, must be self-interested. And then from this, step by step, we're able to derive the law of demand, the law of supply, the law of diminishing marginal utility, the law of returns to scale, right? The theory of interest rate, the theory of prices, the economic calculation. All of this whole spectrum of the science of economics, you're able to derive it from one principle, that human beings act. Step by step, deductively, using valid arguments, you're able to deduce all economic theorems. And this is the book, Human Action. It's 881 pages. Ludwig von Mises was able to deduce all that there is in the science of economics, starting from one principle, that human beings act. Okay, so the methodology, the way that in our science we have investigated human action and explored the implications of human action throughout the course, was using the deductive methodology. We didn't use aggregation. We are methodological individualists. That means we believe only human beings act. Society doesn't act. Aggregation masks individual subjective preferences. You are unique, right? We don't want to aggregate. We want to study human action. Human beings can congregate together. They can do certain, activities together. But it's the individual actions that creates this congregates. So we can't study aggregates. We have to study individuals. Okay. So science of economics is the study of individual human action. It is not a collective study. Collectivism. And the science of and the dismal, not science of macroeconomics arose in the 1930s and 40s, right? When governments intervened in the marketplace and they said, you know what, we want to engineer society. It started with Herbert Hoover. He was an engineer by training. This psychopath, he thought he could engineer society like robots. You know, engineers, they put things together, like they build buildings. So this individual, coming from being an engineer, he thought he could apply engineering to society. He said, I want to engineer society to perform in a certain way. Well, human beings, we're not objects. We have subjective preferences. We're dynamic. Our preferences change just because due to the passage of time. No one can keep up with our preferences. Only the marketplace via the price mechanism can keep up with our preferences. No engineer would know what our preferences is. So the science of engineering, the evil science called macroeconomics, didn't exist until mid-20th century. But I can trace the science of microeconomics, or the science of economics, the true science of economics, all the way down to the Chinese, to Lao Tzu and Taoism, right? To the Spanish scholastics, to the French physiocrats, to the Austrian school of... So I can trace it to thousands of years. But macroeconomics, aggregation of data, is anti-human. It takes the humanity out of the individual. You just become a symbol, an X and a Y and a Z. You're aggregated. Statistical regressional analysis are conducted on you, right? So you just become a footnote. And you become submissive to the group rather than the group being submissive to you, or you want to use the group, right? When we said Human action, human beings enter the market motivated by what? By their own self-interest. I don't enter the marketplace to benefit you. Did you wake up in the morning saying, how can I benefit society? You woke up saying, like, what can I do to improve my well-being, right? So no one thinks in terms of groups, okay? But collectivism is the idea. Don't ask me what your country can do for you, but ask me what you can do for your country. So you're submissive to the country. And you know what I'm talking about, okay? So that's the most evil, okay, statement that anyone could make, okay? The mindset of that individual, you become submissive. No, you are a unique individual, you have a unique role, you can't aggregate, can't be aggregated, right? You have your unique preferences, and the only way you can attain your unique preferences and unique goals is not in democracy. Democracy is the tyranny of the majority. Only a polycentric contractual society could provide the foundations so you can prosper as an individual, you have your freedom, and you know, and the freedom that aligns, and unique freedoms that you desire, and unique preferences, right, that aligns with your human nature. And that's the proprietary contractual society. Now today we're going to talk about the market for morality. There emerges also in the marketplace, in the catalectic order, within the catalectic order also emerges what we call a system of morality, or an order of morality. Today we have two dominant forms of morality. We have the natural rights theory, that you gain your rights, right? Rights is a measure of morality, right? You know, morality has many measures, but rights, the doctrine of rights, is one measure, one characteristics of morality, right? So if your rights are violated, right, then you say, oh, it's immoral, right? So rights is a characteristic, is one measure of morality. Where today dominant rights, we have natural rights, that you derive your rights from nature, okay? And an alternative rights is what? Is rights that you derive from utilitarian calculus, right? The policy that maximizes the well-being of the most number of people, right? Is the best policy. So there are doctrines of rights. There is a market for morality. All I want to say, and I'm going to take a break, so I start the market for morality in more detail. All I want to say is that the natural rights doctrine is not market emergent, is a priori to human action. It's like you can say, I have the right to life. I have the right to property. You can say all these things, but where did you derive that right? Well, from what? Did it emerge from human action? Well, according to the natural rights theorist, this is a priori to human action, to human interaction. These rights arose in the metaphysical world, in another world. It's a metaphysical world beyond human comprehension, beyond human action and interaction. These are a priori. By the mere fact that you're human, you have the right to life. You have the right not to be aggressed against. So I'm gonna show you that there also arises in the marketplace another type of rights, which is positive rights. Those rights are given to you by the political authority. You have the right to education, right? You have the right to housing. You have the right to healthcare, right? These are positive rights. These rights are not embedded in human nature, but they're embedded in the political authority. So today, existing dominant rights doctrines is the natural right doctrine, which also we can call it negative rights, which is you're telling the government, leave me alone. You don't have the right to attack me. You don't have the right to take my property. You can't. You don't have the right to take my defense mechanism. I have the right to bear arms. It's like everything we see in the Bill of the Constitution, the Bill of Rights. That's the natural rights doctrine. John Locke, the American founders, adopted this ideology. And now we have the positive right doctrine, which is like the doctrine of entitlements. These are the two doctrines of morality and rights today. I'm going to present to you an alternative measure of rights. This alternative measure of rights, we're calling it praxeonomy. And praxeonomy is a right that you don't inherit by the mere fact that you're human, but praxeonomy is a right that emerges in the marketplace. So morality is market emergent. Praxeonomy is the norms, is a value system that emerges via human action. It's subjective to that specific location, in time and in place. It reflects human preferences. It's not metaphysical and it's not via political authority. That's what we're going to talk about to conclude this program. So thank you very much. I'm going to take a break and then we'll come back and talk more about market morality and as well as praxeonomy and philanthropy. Thank you.